Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we're talking about a layer 2 that a lot of people are talking about. It's called Mode Network. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Now, you might be asking, Waj, why on earth are we talking about Mode Network? Where on earth did this come from? It caught my attention because of one specific integration, and we'll talk about that later on in the video, but I think there's a few interesting elements here. So I think if you are someone who is interested in the layer 2 space, you'll probably find some benefit to this deep dive. So we're going to cover a few different things. First of all, what is Moat, some of its key features. The reason why I was particularly interested was because of this partnership with Redacted Cartel, and we'll come on to that shortly. Some of the metrics, ecosystem, the token, and an airdrop, of course. The team, bull market, bull case and bear case, I should say, as we always do on this channel. So what actually is Mode? First of all, it's an optimistic layer 2 rollup. So it uses the OP stack and it's on Ethereum. So that means when you do transactions on the Mode network, you are paying in ETH. Now, some of you may have seen this. This is the optimistic superchain ecosystem. Here you'll find all of the different chains that are using the OP stack to build up their own layer 2 chain. Now, why do we even need layer 2 chains? It's mostly for scalability. So we can basically scale with Ethereum security. That's pretty much what Optimism does and what you can do with the OP stack. So you'll find that a lot of these different chains are all using or leveraging the OP stack. Base, for example, which is Coinbase's layer 2, OPBNB, which is Binance's layer 2. You'll see WorldCoin over here. You'll see even like app chains like Avo, which is the options perps protocol, as well as Lyra, both of them deciding to use the OP stack to build out their own chain. There are many benefits to this, of course. First of all, you've got security, but also being part of the Optimism superchain, there are lots of financial benefits for all of these as well. And Mode is one of them. We're going to talk a little bit about some of their key features as well. So one of the things now, and I'm sure many of you watching will be able to appreciate this, is that we now have plenty of infrastructure on block space. There's so many layer 1s, there's so many layer 2s. Like, the real challenge now is growing an ecosystem. And I think there are a number of issues around this. Now, one thing that I have noted is that actually at times, some of these big layer 2s that are coming out, bringing these big dApps, I'm talking like Aave and Uniswap and, big protocols like that, Curve, for example. I think bringing some of these big dApps actually hurts them rather than helps them. And I think it doesn't really help, these layer 2 chains like growing their own native ecosystem. And I think back to kind of what successful layer 2s look like. Arbitrum with the likes of GMX really pioneered growing a native ecosystem, and I think we can clearly see that with Arbitrum today. So I think that's certainly one big issue. Like, you really need to grow your own native ecosystem rather than just getting some of these other apps that are on 10 or 20 other chains already and then bringing them over. That's not innovation to me. The second thing is, like, how do you really incentivize developers? There's so many L2s right now. Why wouldn't they just go to whichever chain is going to give them the biggest grant? How do you specifically take, look at how many different chains there are just building on the Optimism superchain. There's like so many chains now. That is a big problem. And I think that's something that Mode is obviously trying to tackle. And then lastly, what do you focus on? Do you focus on users, or do you focus on the ecosystem? Now, personally, I think generally ecosystem first, and then the users generally will come after that. But at times that might not even be the best case scenario. And we'll talk about kind of how Mode is trying to tackle these different issues. So here's how they're able to do it, or here's how they're trying to do it, I should say. Number one, they have a developer-focused ecosystem with revenue share. Now, we don't often see that, but yeah, revenue share being built in at the chain level, where developers will be able to get some of the revenue from some of the apps that they built directly at the transaction level. We'll talk about that as well. So this sequencer fee, and we'll talk about this on the next slide, but this revenue that is earned from the sequencer fee, I should say, will go to some of these builders. They have this concept called a smart treasury, which is essentially utilizing these idle assets for more revenue. And lastly, this referral system, where anyone who refers users into the Mode ecosystem will actually get a portion of the fees that these referrers use forever. So that's really cool. We're going to talk about all these different things and kind of how it all works. Where are we in terms of Mode timeline? Well, you can actually access it right now. We'll talk about this later on, but you can actually bridge ETH into Mode right now, and you can use it to invite other people, but also use some of the ecosystem apps. I think in the coming weeks and months, we will see like the DeFi ecosystem and native yield, this concept of native yield, come to fruition. And then afterwards, we'll see things like the Mode token and the Mode DAO launch. But that seems to be a couple of months at least away, if not longer. So yeah, let's talk about this. So this is me doing a transaction in my wallet. I think I was doing this on Arbitrum or something. It was costing me 23 cents. And that's in standard mode. If I were to go into instant mode, maybe 30 cents. Okay, not too expensive. But like, where does this fee even go? Well, hopefully I can try and explain it. So this is the rollup. This is the layer 2 blockchain, whether it's Arbitrum, Optimism, Base, Mode, any of your layer 2s, right? Now, what happens is some of this fee goes to the sequencer. And the sequencer is what basically pays the layer 1 for its security. Now, I say some because not all of this is going to go directly to that. Everything above this is pure profit. And so when you pay a transaction, part of it goes to the sequencer, but the rest of it is pure profit. And the question is, what if instead of pocketing all of the profit, what if we use it to pay some of the developers and give them some sort of incentive? So as a developer on Mode, if you create a smart contract and it ends up becoming, a really big app, you can generally get paid quite a lot. So you get paid revenue from some of the fees that people pay, at a transaction level. So when people are connecting their Rabby wallet or their MetaMask or Frame wallet, Rainbow wallet, whichever wallet they use, and they pay these transaction fees, some of it will go to the chain. Some of it will go to the sequencer fees to pay for security. Some of it will also go to developers, and some of it will go to users as well, and we'll talk about that as well. So the founder actually said, it could be 20%, even 50% of the transaction fees on the network. So I guess less profit for the network, but more profit for devs in the long run. Does that mean more profit because we're going to get better apps? I think this is a really, really interesting system. And I think we have seen this before. I think we've seen Phantom talk about it. We've also seen Kanto, which is another layer 1 chain. I haven't seen this at the layer 2 level just yet. And I think this will be a really interesting model. Whether or not it attracts developers is a different question altogether, but I certainly think it is better than having no revenue for sure, isn't it? Now, what about the referral system? So it's basically an addition to the above. What if we use some of these fees to benefit the users of these chains as well? So essentially, I can refer someone into Mode. Let's say that person does a variety of transactions. Part of those transactions, they pay fees. Those fees obviously will go to the sequencer, but part of them will go back to me because I referred them. I personally would love this to be in some sort of combination with the Mode token. I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll have to wait and see. But I think that, it's a really nice way to incentivize bringing more people into the ecosystem and using these different applications. So Mode and Optimism have partnered up. They have got already a 2 million OP token grant, which is around $6 million-ish. It could have been more even. I think when Optimism was trading at around $4, this would be $8 million. So, that's good. That's a lot of money to kick up some sort of ecosystem and use that to develop something to begin with. Of course, isn't nowhere near the likes of some of these other layer 2s, ZK Sync, Linear, etc. But it's certainly a decent amount. And a small percentage of sequencer fees will go back to Optimism as well. So in terms of sequencer fees, we're going to have obviously some going towards Mode themselves, some going back to Optimism to be part of this super chain, some going to developers, and then some going to users. So a 4-way distribution of these sequencer fees. Whether or not that helps in the long run, we'll have to wait and see. Now, what particularly attracted me was these two partnerships. I guess part of the reason is I am a butterfly holder and I do really like Redacted Cartel, and that's kind of where Mode caught my attention. So Mode's partnering up with both Redacted and Athena. How are they going to do that? Well, first of all, Redacted themselves, they have a liquid staking token. It's called PXETH, Pyrex ETH. Now, what this partnership involves is that essentially when users basically bridge into the Mode ecosystem, that ETH will get converted into PXETH. A PXETH is obviously this yield generating asset. Or it may be a PXETH. So please pardon me if I've made a mistake there. But essentially, this yield is around 8% at the moment. So this is revenue generation for the ecosystem with PXETH. I think it's very, very bullish for Redacted, of course. It's also great for Mode because they're going to be able to get yield generating ETH directly into the ecosystem. And at 8%, that is very, very high. So if you've got like $100 million TVL, that's $8 million a year of ETH revenue kind of coming in directly, which I think is fantastic. Similar story with Athena. Ethena have this EUSD, which is this yield generating stablecoin. I believe they have a long and short position where they're able to use some of the funding rates to basically earn some yield. And so the concept is the same, where USDC and USDT will be earning this yield directly within the ecosystem, with yield coming from EUSD. Now, have we heard of this before? Of course we have. I talked about it recently, not too long ago, with Blast. They're using ST ETH from Lido, and they're using a stablecoin from Maker, aren't they? SDAI, which is obviously earning a lot of yield from treasuries. This is probably a little bit more degen than that. The yields are certainly higher. So we'll have to wait to see how this works. But yeah, I think this is pretty cool that they're integrating with both of these. I'd say it's probably more bullish for Redacted and Athena than it is for Mode. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see kind of how much traction they can build. So in terms of the ecosystem, what do we have at the moment? Not so much. I mean, there's a lending app, which has got 20 million TVL, which is pretty cool. Rest are just DEXs. But I did actually go on to the Mode ecosystem website, and I did see that there are quite a few different protocols committed already. ModeSwap, Dexilla, basically just some DEXs. This Ionic protocol is already there. Derivatives, really interesting. Y2K Finance, so one of my favorite apps on Arbitrum for sure. Aori as well, which is this derivatives protocol. Those two really, really interesting that they've committed this early. Definitely have caught my attention there. Pith is like the main oracle on Mode as well. They do have a few other apps, so we'll have to wait and see. But it does seem like some apps are already committed to building there, which is good. Good to see for sure. Now, what has been very, very bullish is seeing how much value has been bridged over already. So 60 million TVL already, which is pretty cool. A lot of it happened, in the last few days, really. So I think on January 1st, look, you can see a massive amount. And this has really just happened in 4 days or so, 60 million. So really, really nice to see. We'll talk about why I think this has happened. But yeah, 50,000 addresses already, which is really good to see. Now, if we look at the entire layer 2 space, look, of course, Arbitrum and Optimism are right there at the top. Arbitrum with 500 different protocols, almost 3 billion TVL. No one matches Arbitrum. There's no question about that. And then you've got these other ones like Optimism, Manta, and Base, which are not that far behind. Can Mode, catch up? Can Mode get itself into, the top 5? Potentially. We'll have to wait and see, but we certainly need to see a lot more than 6 protocols. Look, everyone else here has got 50, 90, 100, 200. I'd really like to see a lot of developers come here, and I think having those incentives, especially at the sequencer level, can certainly play a big role in that. We'll have to wait and see, but that's something that I will be paying close attention to. Of course, right now there's a lot of hype, hence why you can see TVL going up only. But that will settle, and once it does settle, the question is it going to end up like OPBNB, which personally has not achieved much success at all, or is it going to be like Mantle or Base, which I think have achieved some pretty good success? We'll have to wait and see, but yeah, certainly on my radar for now. So let's talk about the Mode token. They do have this Sunrise era, which we're coming into right now, where 5.5% of the supply is used to reward users for kind of growing this network in this early stage. So 5.5% of the supply means 550 million tokens, which means the total supply is going to be around 10 billion. Now, there isn't any clear documentation on the vesting, the distribution, team allocation just yet. We'll have to wait and see. But it does appear to be that the token is going to come out in Q2. So that means not that long away, maybe 3-4 months away. And we'll have to see how much of an ecosystem can they grow in this short time period. Just to compare FDVs of some of these other chains, obviously Arbitrum and Optimism are miles ahead, but you've got Mantle and Manta and Metis, which are maybe 3 or 4 times smaller. I wonder where Mode will kind of fit into this. I think it probably will be in between Metis and Manta. I can't see it being higher than that for the moment. But of course things can change, and if in the next 3 months there's 50 applications, there's $1 billion of TVL, then I think, we could certainly see it competing with the likes of Mantle. But yeah, for now, I think it's probably going to be more closer to Metis than any of these others for now. I think there's also a lot of competition with some of these tokenless L2s, Base, for example, Blast, which has 1.3 billion in TVL. And then we've got the big boys like Starknet, Linear Scroll, and ZK Sync as well, which are all... They've all got a lot of money to spend. So yeah, I think I'd definitely put mode towards the bottom here rather than closer to the top. Does that mean there's more upside? Potentially. But again, we don't know much about the token. We don't know about the tokenomics. We don't know about the vesting. So it's very difficult to kind of put, a fair valuation on something that's just so new. Like I said, this has only really been getting a lot of hype in the last 3-4 days. It's very, very early. There will be an airdrop. I have been able to get 700 points because I've basically used DeFi, I used NFTs, I'm a degen, I've used ETH scaling rollups, I'm an OG, and according to them, I don't think I'm an OG. And I've used a few different yield apps, so for this reason alone, I was able to get 700 points on this one wallet. I haven't checked other wallets just yet, but it does seem like if you have like used any of these other things, DeFi, NFT scaling, OG, degen, and yield, you do get some points, which is really cool. And you can claim these points if you actually bridge into mode. So you have to bridge some ETH directly into mode. This is what the bridge looks like. So you basically have some ETH here, you bridge it directly into mode. You can bridge it back as well, remember that. But you need to bridge in directly if you want to be able to claim those points. Now, bridging for me, I did it at a time when Gwei was really low, so it cost me about $4. Hopefully 700 points is worth more than $4. We'll have to wait and see. We can actually get more points. So, of course, bridging is one way. The other way is by inviting friends to mode. And so there is this code. This is my code over here. Z, capital Y, P, capital NT 9. I'll leave this in the description below. Please use my code. It gives me more points, and we know that points mean prizes. If you don't want to use my code, if you don't want to use my ref link, don't worry about it. I'm sure there's plenty of others as well that you can use. But yeah, use one of these, whether it's mine or anyone else's, and you'll be able to help each other out. And I think if you use my code, I get 16% of the points you collect as well. That is a nice little bonus for me. So like I said, it doesn't matter if you use it. The other way that you can get points is by using some of these ecosystem apps. So depositing in the launch partner ecosystem apps. These are some of the ones over here, like Ionic and Kim, so you can use these, and I believe you'll be able to get some more points that way. And then lastly, there will be some quests, and so there are some boosted points for completing some of these quests. So yeah, keep an eye out for them. But these points will eventually be converted into mode tokens, probably in Q2. And hopefully this could be worth quite a lot. I mean, there are 50,000 people who have bridged already, so quite a fair amount. But I mean, if you do any significant amount of volume or transaction count, I think it should be fairly easy to get yourself in the top 25% here. And I think if we're talking about a chain that could be 500 million TVL, or probably less than Metis, but yeah, if we're talking about something like that, 500 million FTV, I should say, or 300 million or 400 million FTV. I think that could be quite a decent airdrop. We'll have to wait and see, of course. Now, James Treacher is the founder of Mode Network. He's an angel investor in quite a few different protocols. I believe he has also created his own protocol in the past. He's British. There was this podcast that he did with DeFi Dad that I recommend everyone to watch, where he basically explains the thought process behind building Mode, the thought process behind some of these different architectural features that we've talked about earlier on in this video. And yeah, I recommend everyone give that one a watch for sure. I couldn't find too much about any VC raise. Couldn't find anything really about the rest of the team. I did see that there are some core contributors for Mode on LinkedIn, but they don't really have much Twitter presence whatsoever. I thought that was a little bit strange, but take that as you wish. So yeah, let's move on to the bull and bear case. Bull case for me is pretty simple. Look, native yield directly with PXETH and ETH, and these are two assets that earn a lot of yield right now. So that is really interesting, and I think will definitely get people bridging over, especially taking advantage of this points and airdrop meta that we have right now. Everyone's talking about points, everyone's talking about airdrops. They've timed it pretty well, actually. They've already got a decent size OP grant at $6 million. They can use that well, and if they do use that well, they should be able to really prop up the ecosystem very developer focused as well. The idea that revenue share with developers coming in at the chain level, I think that's fantastic. People would rather build here than other chains if they're able to get revenue from people's transactions on those chains as well. I think good devs makes good apps which will attract users towards it, so I think that's great. But also remember that users are also incentivized to bring other people onto the chain because of future rewards. And I think potentially there could be a fat airdrop coming. So who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But I think I have bridged some ETH over. That's why you can use my referral link over here. Use this and hopefully we both get some points from that. Now, bear case, of course, we have to talk about this as well. Firstly, the competition. Layer 2s are probably one of the most competitive areas of crypto right now. There's a new Layer 2 popping up every single week. Do they have enough of a moat with these features that enables them to capture, $1 billion of TVL? That is a question that I have, especially when you've got competitors like Blast, which are doing very, very similar things, but Blast already has $1 billion in TVL. Blast has native yield and similar kind of features. And yes, they don't have the developer revenue share, but I mean, could they not introduce that? Can't another layer 2 just introduce that? That is something that I am thinking about. Secondly, will the protocol, if revenue is going to go, split 4 ways like we talked about, it's going to OP, it's going to the protocol itself or the chain itself, it's going to devs, and it's going to users. The question I have is, are Mode themselves going to make enough money? That is another question I have. Secondly, or fourthly, I should say, I think this is the 4th point now. Is Mode kind of limited in terms of growth? Can it even outgrow Optimism itself? I think that it certainly can. I think we've seen evidence of this in the past where Base, for example, has really outgrown Optimism at times, or even in the Cosmos ecosystem where we see different chains that completely outgrow Atom. That is something that has happened, but I think it is something that people will think about. The Mode token, we don't really know much about it. Is there going to be sequencer fee revenue share directly with Mode token holders? I don't know about that. We have a lot of unknowns still regarding the team, VC raise and things like that. And then lastly, using EUSD and PXETH in terms of risk management, they are certainly on the higher risk side of things. I mean, Blast are using STETH and SDAI, which are clearly significantly more liquid, probably a lot more safer in terms of risk. That is something that I am also thinking about. So all in all, look, I'm very impressed with what I see at the moment with Mode. I think it is pretty interesting. I have already bridged that, and I definitely will be playing around with the ecosystem. I think, at the end of the day, all it takes is 1-2 killer apps, and you've got a thriving ecosystem built on top of it. So I'll wait for that to happen. Hopefully that does happen, especially with the developer incentives, but also the user incentives are pretty good there. And I think, if I can get some revenue coming from all of you guys watching, I think that is great because you guys can also refer other people. That is fantastic. That will get a lot of people using these sorts of apps. But ultimately, they need to build native apps directly from Mode themselves or directly within the Mode ecosystem themselves. I hope that they don't start bringing in Aave and Uniswap and all these other big exchanges or big apps from other networks already. I hope they build up their own ecosystem, build their own DeFi protocols, and really make high quality apps. If you bring in good developers, you will get a high quality app. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. We covered Mode, the new layer 2 blockchain built on the OP stack. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you're watching this on Twitter, give it a like, give it a retweet, drop a comment down below as always, wherever you're watching this. And we'll be back with plenty more content in the near future.